Excellent. So we are continuing on with the cloud of unknowing, and we are on chapter 3 on page 119. And this is quite an exciting little thing here because it says that the little heading to the chapter, the little, I don't know what they call that. I'm sure there's a word for that, that little statement or shloka that they put underneath the name of the chapter. How this exercise is to be made and how it is worth more than all other exercises. And I think the exercise that we're talking about is this contemplative prayer, this meditation. Okay, so he says, lift up your heart to God with a humble impulse of love. You take that apart. That's beautiful. He's got a footnote. He said, this is clearly a reminiscence of the Sursum Corda at the beginning of the preface to the Eucharistic prayer. Lift up your hearts. We lift them up to the Lord. The author deals at length with the contemplative implications of lift up your heart, right? And it's really just well, I mean, it's almost a meditation in itself. What does it mean to lift up your heart? For me, it means to open it, to put it on the table and just become completely vulnerable before the divine. Open your heart, you see what's in there, and consciously make it available to anybody who wants to look in there. To lift up your heart to God with a humble, with a humility, which means a resignation, an allowance. I find that more and more my opinion of spiritual life is to make oneself available to God. That is the highest form to me of spirituality, is to make oneself available consciously to the divine impulse, to your nature of love and wisdom, in a meaningful, in a very real world sort of way, just opening up to what is, accepting what is, seeing it as perfect, surrendering to it. And I've enjoyed having some meditations in the last few months with that ideal that I've shared with you, that just that opening up and just making yourself available to the divine beloved, that there's a wonderful bliss in noticing God at work in yourself, when you really let go and just become aware of Mother working in you while you're practicing, while you're consciously opening and being available. I like to imagine or become aware of the workings of the fingers of the Divine Mother deep, deep, deep down in myself, in my soul, where she's changing some scars, she's eliminating, unhelpful things, switching switches that I'm not even aware of, and so it's just for me to lay on the changing table and to not make a mess and allow Mother to do her work. So we lift our heart to God with a humble impulse of love. That's a humble impulse of love is that it's that fond regard that I like to talk about Brother Lawrence having. It's also that childlike trusting, right? That childlike trusting, understanding that the impulse of love is what you are opening to, and that it's grace that you are making yourself available for. And so your vulnerability is safety. You're fine. So lift up your heart to God with a humble impulse of love and have himself as your aim, right? That divine presence, which is what? Satchitananda. So to be a person that can be described by love, wisdom, and being, that's the impulse. That is what is happening. You are allowing your cage, your ego, to be dismantled so that that which is truly you, that impulse of love and wisdom, is free, is liberated, freed from your ego, freed from the limitations of your narratives that prevent you from being the loving person you want to be, that prevent you from being the joyful person that you want to be. With a humble impulse of love, and have himself as your aim, not any of his goods, right? So it's not an exchange, right? That's why mature prayer is communion, right? Mature prayer is just being in the presence of that divine love and opening your awareness to that as wide as you possibly can by focusing as well as you can on that impulse, right? And to be there, not it begins in conversation, and that's fine. There is a place for conversation. There is a place for asking for things, asking to be taken care of, asking for others to be taken care of. But we find in the end that the highest prayer is thy will be done, right? It's no longer us asking for things. It's us. That prayer, thy will be done, is not just a do it your way prayer. It's a finding the moment perfect prayer, right? Thy will be done. You are doing the best. What is what is best, because that is coming directly from the beloved. So we're not interested in any of his goods. We're not trying to get something or attain something. It's a date. You're there to enjoy one another's company, to open up your deeper selves to one another, and to learn to trust and to hear each other. Take care that you avoid thinking of anything but himself, but God. Right? So that's the focus. That's the single pointed mind that we're trying to train ourselves on. Right? It's necessary when you start getting down into the very subtleties of being. It's that's a world that most of us don't even ever become aware of. But there are practices and things that you will want to know uh, deep within yourself, and they're so subtle that the amount of training that it takes to not be pulled off of topic or to be pulled away from observing these very subtle inner aspects about ourselves, it takes a lot of discipline. And that's why a lot of our practice is about that discipline, about focus, about keeping attention, because the deeper work of spiritual life requires that very. It's like watching a woman from Belgium doing her lace. I was watching a YouTube video of this very old woman who was still doing the traditional lace work, and she was Belgian, where they do that famous lace work, and just the nimbleness of her fingers, and her ability to take those very fine threads and to always remember and pick up the exact right ones. That takes a very subtle awareness, a very precise awareness. So we've got God as our aim, and we're taking care that we avoid thinking of anything else. Let nothing else intrude. Let nothing else pull your attention away. Let nothing else draw your eyes away so that you miss seeing something very important, right? So that there is nothing for your reason or your will to work on except himself, right? And that's a way of saying surrendering your narrative, surrendering your calculating mind, surrendering your story to the is, right? To simply be. No narrative, just be. Narratives always require attributes. Attributes are the fence that prevent Satchitananda from being able to be free.
So when he says that keep your mind on God and don't think of anything else, that does it imply that the mind should be silent? Or
Yes.
what's in his interpretation, keeping one's mind on God?
Well, keeping your mind on the presence of love, keeping your mind in the security of love, keeping your mind in the safety of love, in the trust of love, in a faith of that nature of that love, being infinite, being unconditioned, being free, being fully available, right? To allow yourself to focus on those elements, the nature of God, the nature of love, so that you can really sink into it, so that all of the subtle um, resistances of your mind uh, can be let go of. Those subtle things that come from samskaras from ages past that will try and break the trust in that love, that break your faith in the security of that love, right? Because it's because of our lack of trust or lack of willingness to accept that we go looking elsewhere, for our distractions, for our love. And so this is that practice of not letting yourself run, not letting yourself close up in defense or fear, but to sit there and continue to open and become more and more and more vulnerable in the safety of an unconditioned infinite love. So it's holding that space and not letting your mind wander into narratives and stories and wonderings and whatnot. Right? It's holding that space for yourself. He's going to fill it in here some more. So we want to keep our mind only on himself, and the nature of God is that love, that all-knowing presence. Do all that in you lies to forget all the creatures that God ever made and their works, so that neither your thought nor your desire be directed or extended to any of them, neither in the general nor in the particular. Right? So this is the practice for the Gyanis, right? The Gyanis who keep their attention on attention, which means don't let anything that's not real, don't let anything that changes grab your attention. Stay within that unchanging aspect of self within you, that source of love that's in the shrine of the heart. That has always been there. It is the source of all your actions, right? And so we sit there and we don't let that neither your thought nor your desire be directed or extended to any of them, neither in the general or in the particular. So in absolutely no way are you distracted from your awareness of your own awareness, keeping the eye on the experiencer and not on the experience. That's what we're trying to do there. Let them alone and pay no attention to them. This is the work of the soul that pleases God most. All saints and angels take joy in this exercise and are anxious to help it on with all their might. Right? Because even if you can have a successful split moment where that attention is pure, where that attention is not carried off by any other thought or any other awareness, there's a delightful joy there, a delightful bliss in that presence, and it's the bliss that grows into ecstasy, right? And so all saints and angels take joy in this exercise. It's the fulfillment of life. It's, we're all looking for this realization or trying to accept this realization because it's the fulfillment. It's the fulfillment of every action you've ever made. It's the fulfillment of every desire that you've ever had in its truest form. It's not a fulfillment through the objects. It's a fulfillment from behind the desire itself that dissolves the desire itself, removes the impetus for a desire, because it's a contentment that is so comfortable, that is so enriching, so pleasant, so beautiful, that no desire forms when you sit in that space where you are entrenched in that space of God. Right? They're anxious to help it on with all their might. They're throwing everything into it, and this is how we meditate. Right? This is a great practice. This is why I made that little bit of a change in my practice from doing jopam for an hour and instead doing jopam for 10 minutes, taking a little bit of a breather, then doing 10 more minutes. It's that idea of not getting burned out on the effort, that each time you repeat your mantra, you never let it become just a quick rote thing. You say every syllable of it with awareness and with attention, right? It's the idea when Vivekananda says, if you are able to repeat your mantra perfectly, even once in your life, you will have your realization, he says, right? If you can just repeat that mantra even once perfectly in your life, that will be your realization. And so each time that we say it, we try to say it with an absolute focus, an absolute reverence, an absolute awareness, an absolute sincerity, an absolute earnestness, right? It is the name of God, after all, right? And so we try to refresh that notion, that depth, each time that we say it. So that's why they're doing it with all their might. All the devils are furious when you undertake it and make it their business insofar as they can to destroy it, right? That's egoism, right? Your ego does not want to be destroyed or to be diminished. And so anytime that you're doing something like this, where it doesn't get to have an opinion, it doesn't get to have a narrative, it doesn't get to say its piece, It will do everything possible to remind you of the video game that you got halfway going in the other room, or remind you of something that has to be finished. Oh my gosh, you've got to do your laundry today. Oh my gosh, you've got to pack. Oh my gosh, you've got to, right? All those things so it can distract you and keep its narrative running. We cannot know how wonderfully all people dwelling on earth are helped by this exercise. Vivekananda said that, right? He said that one person realizing God on a mountaintop does more service to humanity than 1,000 volunteers in an orphanage and hospital. Right? He says one person sitting on a mountaintop and realizing God is a greater gift to humanity. Why? Because that actually becomes part of the underlying whole, right? That energy that is released through realization, that energy that's released through the death of an ego, adds just it's what makes a temple holy, you know, that presence of God, unabashed, undisguised, and it becomes part of that underlying reality of all of humanity. So everybody is benefited from it. Yes, and the souls in purgatory are eased of their pain, and you yourself are purified and made virtuous, much more by this work than by any other, right? Because you're becoming aware of yourself. You're becoming aware of the fundamental you, which is pure love and pure being. And so when you start realizing that your desires are not dictated by the body and by the mind and all the circumstances and conditions that they're aware of, then you can take your attention off of those things and put it on the unchanging, and then that attention builds. It's like uh, money in money in a money market. You know, that interest falls back in on itself. It doesn't get diffused. Energies spent on desires get diffused in all different directions and leave you tired at the end of the day. But for that person keeping that one pointed thought of God, he can work all day long and still be just as fresh, right? Because he has not diffused his focus, diffused his energy. Yet it is the easiest exercise of all, and the most readily accomplished when a soul is helped by grace in this felt desire. Right? That's exactly what would make him accomplished, is that he has become reliant on grace. He has taken grace as his safety, the love of God as his safety. And that is not conditioned. That is not changing. That is not circumstantial. That is present in the moment that has never begun and never ended. This moment. And to be established in that is to feel a great joy that is reliable because it's not conditioned. It is yours. It's why the direct disciples, after Ramakrishna passed away, they were working so hard doing all this practice. And M said to them, "Why are you guys doing all of this practice? Didn't Thakur give all of you enlightenment?" And they were like, "Yes, but we want to make it our own, right? We want to establish ourselves in it. We don't want something that was a gift. We want the isness of our being, right? We want to be established in this place. And we become established in it by the unchanging nature of grace. Grace is always perfect. Your behaviors, your accomplishments, your achievements will always change. And your memories of them and your feelings toward them will always change. But grace itself is the one reliable, unchanging aspect of God that you can always rest in, always find your peace in. Otherwise, it would be extraordinarily difficult for you to make this exercise, right? If it wasn't for grace, it would be extraordinarily difficult because it just takes a very subtle hint of shame, a very subtle hint of fear, a very subtle hint of insecurity, a very subtle hint of lust to pull you out of the most beautiful aspects of your inner world, right? To pull you right back up to the churning surface of the ocean rather than the stillness of the depth, right? Do not hang back then, but labor in it until you experience the desire, right? Until you experience, well, interesting that he says the desire. He's talking there about the longing for God and experiencing that richness of that longing, of that, hmm, Yeah, as long as we're not in the state of union, to become aware of what it is to not be in union with God and to feel yourself at every level make that cry, that primordial cry for the divine, for the beloved. That's a, yeah. For when you first begin to undertake it, all that you find is a darkness. Right? You close your eyes and go inward. Here's what? It's the world is red and mushy in here. What's there's nothing going on. I didn't understand it all for the longest time. I still don't understand actually, but I certainly understood much less before when Ramakrishna would talk about that your inner world was infinite. To dive deep, I was like, well, what do you mean? there's nothing in there. There's nowhere to go in there. What are you talking about? Right? And it's not until we begin to experience the stillness inside and not the sensations. You know, we think when we close our eyes that what we see is our inner world. No, that's you're still seeing the senses. You're still paying attention to the senses, right? You have to abandon the input from the senses and find that center of your being that love comes from, right? That love comes from. Find the place that you feel when you think of something or someone that you love, right? And then you think only of the love and not the object. Think only of the love, and you breathe into it, and it will lead you to the heart. It will lead you to the shrine within yourself. And that's where your infinity lies. The depth of that experience of being. That's where you find the gems that are scattered about the temple door within you that Ramakrishna is always talking about. You'll find an infinite expanse within yourself because you become the moment, which is a wonderful. For when you first begin to undertake it, all that you find is a darkness, a sort of cloud of unknowing. You cannot tell what it is, except that you experience in your will a simple reaching out to God. This darkness and cloud is always between you and your God, right? This darkness is that egoism, that sense of separateness and particular that causes us our trouble. That is Maya. This cloud of unknowing is Maya. Always between you and your God, no matter what you do, and it prevents you from seeing Him clearly by the light of understanding in your reason, and from experiencing Him in sweetness of love in your affection. Right? It's that separateness is the antithesis to love. Right? The stories that keep you apart from God, that keep you independent, as it were, is the antithesis of love. Love is union. Love is oneness. And as long as you have a will that you call your own, as long as you have a narrative that you say is your own, as long as you believe that there's a space within you for your own free will, that is counter to absorption in love, in the love of the divine, because God and you are not separate. And it's the fact that you have nurtured the idea that you are, and that you're protecting that freedom, protecting that independence, protecting that free will, that is what causes you to suffer, right? That's creating an unreal thing and identifying with it. So you see what it prevents you. It prevents you from seeing Him clearly by the light of understanding in your reason, right? So it clouds your buddhi. Maya makes up seem like down and down seem like up, right? It makes you feel like you are in the body when the body is in you. It makes you feel like you are in the world when in fact the world is in you, right? So it turns everything upside down. And it keeps you from experiencing the light of understanding in your reason and from experiencing Him in sweetness of love in your affection. That welling up of that beautiful feeling of love. Oh man, that is a wonderful feeling. Most of us feel it only in the presence of someone, a partner or a lover or a wife or a husband or a family member. that embrace, the warmth of that love, the opening of the heart. I remember being a teenager, it was like intoxicating. You couldn't believe that feeling of love, right? And so this idea of separateness prevents you from being the essence of that, from finding a union in the essence of it. So set yourself to rest in this darkness as long as you can, always crying out after him whom you love, right? Nurse that longing. So Hafiz has a lovely poem. He says, "Do not let your loneliness go too soon. Hold on to it. Let it steep like a fine tea to remind you how deeply you need the beloved." Right? So take your loneliness, take your struggle, don't resist it. Steep it into a fine tea of longing and let that aroma reach the beloved, right? You sit there just putting out that call, that longing, please. Oh, my love, please. For if you are to experience him or to see him at all, insofar as it is possible here, it must always be in this cloud and in this darkness. So if you labor at it with all of your attention, as I bid you, I trust in his mercy that you will reach this point, right? You'll reach through it and touch something. But as long as there's a sense of self and separateness, there's going to be that darkness and yearning, right? But don't resist it as if you're yearning something that is outside of you. This is the soul's yearning for itself, right? This is the embodied God, the trapped God, yearning for his divine nature, yearning for freedom, yearning for infinity, for immortality. All of the all of those things that are already ours, but we don't believe them. We don't trust them. We don't dare to accept them. For if you are to experience him or to see him at all, insofar as it is possible here, it must always be in this cloud and in this darkness. So if you labor at it with all of your attention, as I bid you, I trust in his mercy that you will reach this point, right? Because it is exactly that allows us to find this beautiful point. It's that trust in his mercy, that trust in his love. That's what Ramakrishna is trying to tell you. He says, when you take one step toward God, know that God has taken 16 steps toward you. Every little bit that you run to God, God has been running miles for you because he wants you, as if you see it that way, he wants you as 16 times more than you want him. And for us to believe that, we're like, what? God wants me? What would God have to do with me? Yeah, right? Oh, no, we can't even accept it as a thought. And yet that's the divine reality. All right, that's chapter 3. Any questions on that or interests or concerns? All right, chapter 4. The brief nature of this exercise. It cannot be attained by intellectual study or through the imaginative faculty. Right? So the brief nature of this exercise, it cannot be attained by intellectual study or through the imaginative faculty. So it's not going to happen in your mind. That's what he's saying. It's not going to be a string of thoughts. It's not going to be the end of a philosophy. It's not going to be because of a reasoning or a logical argument. This is not going to happen in mind because there's nothing to happen. It's a return to home or an awareness of home. To prevent you from making mistakes in this exercise and from thinking that it is other than it actually is, I'm going to tell you a little more about it as I believe it to be. It is an exercise that does not need a long time before it can be truly done, as some men seem to think. right? This is an important thing. Mother says you can have your realization right now if you can let go of your desire. So it need not be a long process. It need not be a multiple life endeavor. And this is why I tell people for us to be very careful about our narrative about ourselves, because your narratives are your karma, right? And I always tell people, well, my biggest concern is that always in a Q&A, someone will inevitably make the statement, I can't meditate, my mind is so noisy. How do I calm this noisy mind? How do I learn how to meditate? And I'm like, well, be careful. Because number one, you've never done anything but meditate. You have been the absolute unchanging within yourself, looking out through a pair of eyes for thousands of years. Thousands of years, body after body after body, and in none of those births were you ever the doer in reality. You are the world's greatest meditator because you have been meditating for an infinity of time, right? And so the story is false that you can't meditate. And this, oh, my mind is so noisy, I can't meditate. No, you know that your mind is noisy because you are deep in meditation. You can feel the distraction of your noisy mind. That indicates that your nature is quiet, is still within you, right? And so don't create the false narrative, because if you make the assumption that you can't meditate, then you cannot realize that you are meditating. If you keep the idea that I'm the mind and it's noisy and somehow it's preventing something, then you can't pull yourself from mind. You are that. You are what you seek. Just like that famous thing that Nisargadatta says. Do you not know? Can you not understand that it is your quest for happiness itself that is preventing you from being happy? Right? So we create a false narrative which causes us to look for something that doesn't have an existence, and we're whirling, we're spinning, which is why it takes so long, because we like to whirl and spin. So this exercise does not need a long time before it can be truly done, as some men seem to think, for it is the shortest possible of all exercises that men can imagine. Because what is the ultimate reality? Yourself. So it's basically you being yourself. That's the height of spiritual life. It's just that you don't know who this self is, right? And so how do you be something you don't know? That's why Vedanta's beginning word is the question, who are you? Who are you? As soon as you know who you are, Om Ram Bingo finished. You reach the goal. It is neither longer nor shorter than an atom, because it has nothing to do with space. It's beyond space. The atom, if we follow the definition of good philosophers in the science of astronomy, it is the smallest particle of time. It is so little that because of its littleness, it is indivisible and almost imperceivable. Okay, so we got some dated physics knowledge here. Because we know that the atom is in fact divisible. That's what caused us that terrible explosion. And that it's almost unperceivable, but actually, did you see, I think it's been in the last 2 years, you can actually see a picture of an atom. There actually is a picture of an atom. It's quite disappointing because it just looks like a little fuzzy piece of cloud. You can't see anything particular about it. But yes, so it is perceivable now. We can perceive it with the eye, with our instruments. But he's basically just saying, that's not the point at all of what he's saying. It's just my computer science mind being interested. But he's saying, that it's outside of time. So it takes not a short time and not a long time. It's not big or small, right? So it's not relative. It's not dependent on anything. That's the most important aspect of it. It's not relative. It's not big or small, and it's not short or long. It's because it's imminent. It always is, right? This moment can be experienced in both ways. It is the time of which it is the time of which it is written. All time is given to you. It shall be asked of you how you have spent it. And it is right that you should give account for it is neither longer nor shorter, but exactly equal to each single stirring that is in the chief working power of your soul, that is, your will. Right? For as many choices and desires, no more and no less, as there can be, and are in your will in 1 hour, or are there atoms in an hour? Okay, we have to read this whole paragraph again. If you were reformed by grace according to the primal state of man's soul, as it was written before sin, you would always, by the help of that grace, be in control of that impulse or of those impulses. None of them would go unheeded, but all would reach out to the preeminent and supreme object of your will and your desire, which is God Himself. Okay, so let's read. We'll read from the second sentence there. It is the time of which it is written. All time is given to you. It shall be asked of you how you have spent it. Right? So, your moment, your idea of time that's been given to you, what are you doing with it, as it were, in this life? And it is right that you should give account of it, for it is neither longer nor shorter, but exactly equal to each single stirring that is in the chief working power of your soul, that is, your will. Right? So it's long enough for you to work out your will. And what is working out your will? It's coming to know that the only thing you ever desired was God. You thought you wanted money because it gave you some notion of security. You thought it was power because it gave you some notion of power. You thought it was a relationship because that gave you some notion of oneness, right? You thought that it was wealth because that gave you some notion of freedom, right? So all of these desires that you have for all of these things are just desires for aspects of God that you've associated with objects. And when you come to know that the only thing you have ever desired in any object, person, place, or thing was the quality of God represented by it, then you can stop running after objects and go after that, right? Which is within you already. And so this is the working out of your will in time. For as many choices and desires, no more and no less as there can be, and are in your will in 1 hour, or are there atoms in an hour, right? So just there can be almost an infinite number an hour. If you were reformed by grace, right? Grace is the permission to accept fullness, to accept this oneness. According to the primal state of man's soul, as it was before sin, right? You would always, by the help of that grace, be in control of that impulse or of those impulses, and not even necessarily in control in the sense of, gritting your teeth and guiding everything, but to be unaffected by them, unconcerned by them, so that they do not pull you or push you one way or the other. That's to be in absolute control of yourself, because these impulses and these things are not of yourself. They are of body and mind. Yourself is always steady. None of them would go unheeded, but all would reach out to the preeminent and supreme object of your will and your desire, which is God Himself. So it's an understanding that all of these things are pouring out to God, right? It's part of why when you meditate, one of the descriptions of at least mantra meditation is to picture your divine beloved within and let the love flow from you, your devotion flow from you into the presence, right? That's you flowing yourself into this oneness, out of this particular container into the ocean. He fits himself exactly to our souls by adapting his Godhead to them, and our souls are fitted exactly to him by the worthiness of our creation after his image and his likeness, right? That we are the reflection, he is the reality. And so, as the mirror, the reflection in the mirror, it understands that it has no reality of itself. It gives up its notion of its separateness and its attributes, and it accepts the attributes of that which is being reflected in it. So we learn to see that we are not the experiencer, the experience, we're the experiencer, that there's a oneness there, right? He by himself alone, and no one but he, is fully sufficient, and much more so to fulfill the will and the desire of our souls. That's that contentment by coming to realize that you are the Atman, the spirit, and not the body, not the mind. Because one of the first lessons of science, of solitude, of silence, one of the first lessons of inner silence is that no desire arises from yourself. All desires are born in the body or in the mind, never in you, the observer. And our soul, because of his reforming grace, is wholly enabled to comprehend by love the whole of him who is incomprehensible to every created knowing power, that is, to the souls of angels and of men. I speak of their knowing and not of their loving. That is why I call their souls, in this case, knowing powers. Right? It's just that notion that none of these things can be known in the classical sense of mind. Nobody can ever describe you or God, right? There are no limits. So any attribute that you put is a limit. So God either has no attributes or God has every attribute. It doesn't matter because in the state of knowing, there's one without a second. So there's no one to describe it. So we don't know how to describe it. But it's outside of time, it's outside of space, and immediately now it is outside the reach of mind, right? And when God tries to appear within the limits, how does he appear? As change. Because the story he's trying to tell, the narrative he's trying to manifest, is infinite. So when God manifests in the finite, he can only manifest as constant, unrepeating change, right? Because he has to be all attributes or no attributes. So you could see the change as being all attributes, or you could find that there is no particular moment where he is one thing and not another, that it's a constant flow of change. There is no break in there where he is actually something at any given time, right?
Time and movement are actually the God. Because
The
change
constant.
happens for us in time and some sort of a change, right? Always in time.
Yeah, it's a trick question though. Yes, it is true. God is change, right? God is change. But when you try and figure out what that means, it will lead you to the unchanging absolute, right? Because you look at the moment, if you've got the idea of a past and a future, which is what you need in order to see change, right? Then the moment becomes non existent. Because at what point does the future become the present before it becomes the past? And so if you have a future and a past, you find that you have no space for isness. You have no present in there because it's infinitesimally small. But if you take note, if you deny future and deny past, then you have an infinite moment within which God manifests but is never caught. Right? So it's one or the other. So yes, you can say God is changed, but what you're really saying is when you go looking for that change, that which is changing, you fall through it to a it's like when you go looking for the movement in a movie, where is it going to take you? To an understanding of the unchanging. You're going to realize that the change was really the delusion. that God is the absolute unchanging, that the movie is a still frame. The movement was your mind. The movement was your narrative, right? The movie itself in its essence is unchanging.
So we can only know God through the movement or motion that happens through time, because we don't have the oneness. The moment we kind of become one with the beloved, then we become this oneness and we go beyond time and motion. That's it.
We go beyond, yeah, we go beyond the story, the narrative, the movie, the change. We go beyond the change and we find that which is behind it, the white screen, as it were, right? That potential that is all possibility. See, the moment, it, there's not really much point in talking about these things because anything we say is false, but we can sort of point at it. But in I mean, it's just that. We can't be distracted by the change. That's what our ignorance is because it creates a narrative in us, right? But in silence, in stillness, in the absolute quiet inside, we become aware of being the light of awareness through which all change passes, but which itself is never changing. So the two become one at the final thing. Now, how does that happen? We can't say. There's no way we can know that in mind. Right? But ultimately, Shiva and Shakti are a singularity. And the basic way that we describe that is that this moment, which is unchanging and never ending, never beginning, this moment is the summation of the entire past and the moment from which the entire future is projected. So, this moment that is God contains the entire past and the entire future simultaneously and is itself unchanging. Yay.
It's a very exciting thought.
It's beautiful. It is. It's a wonderful, wonderful
This
thought.
very moment contains entire past and entire future, and it doesn't exist.
Yes. Well, it is existence itself. Existence is not an attribute of it. It is that which gives all existence. Right. So
It has,
this moment,
it has the flavor of like, I know my mom said this to me, and I've said this to my kids. When you get bombarded with the questions, your answer's just because I said so. Or like, it just is because I said so. All encompassing answer. You just trust that the one that's given the reply is the thing that ultimately loves you unconditionally, wholeheartedly, and created you. You know, it's really funny.
yeah. It is. I mean, it's our tendency to want to grab the infinite, to want to contain the inexplicable, to be able to describe the attributeless, right? We just can't help it. And that's our delusion, right? Because once we've defined ourselves as separate, there's a need to find the boundary. But the assumption was wrong. So you're never going to find the boundary, right? There is an absolute unchanging you that has always and will always be the same. And it can tell all stories from all vantage points. Uh, yeah, it's the container of all possibilities simultaneously. It's when God manifests that he Kali is time, right? So Kali, the personal God, is time. Why? Because it allows that infinite change to be pulled out into a line, rather than being an infinitesimally unmoving point, right? And so God manifest is Kali, time. He stretches his nature out into an infinite length and allows your light of awareness in ignorance to see only this point and not to be able to see the line. So that's egoism. Egoism is what takes away your access to seeing it all as an infinitesimal, all-encompassing point. Your ego, Maya, stretches it out into an infinite line. Yeah. So that's personal God. This story. Anyway, there's so many illegal things in there, but at least they're pointing to something. What they're pointing at, the senses will never be able to hand to you, but it's something you've never lost. Something that you have never not known. All right. Go forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swami.
Jai Ma. Jai Ma.
Thank you, Gemma.
Good night. Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.